Welcome to English for Academic and Professional Purposes class. This time, let's consider the learning skills that defends a stand in an issue representing reasonable arguments supported by properly cited factual evidences. Here are the specific objectives. The learners will be able to determine different kinds of logical fallacy, identify factors on authenticity and validity of evidences or information, and present reasonable arguments and factual evidences to defend a stand. In everyday life, people take sides and form opinions on anything that involves them. However, defending your point by simply saying, because I think so, won't help you make a case. When we face an issue and are challenged to make a stand, it is necessary for us to support it with logical arguments. It is therefore important that you learn how to properly outline your thoughts and make valid arguments. You will take part in a larger debate by stating your arguments and proposed course of action. You are expected to determine different kinds of logical fallacy, identify factors on authenticity and validity of evidences or information, and defend your stand on a particular issue by presenting reasonable arguments supported by properly cited factual evidences. The following are reminders to effectively defend your claim or stand. We have the first one, the logical fallacies. Logical fallacies are errors in reasoning that invalidate an argument. As a critical thinker, you have to identify and examine fallacies and manipulative language. Here are the types of fallacy in its example. Fallacy. The first one is the false dilemma. False dilemma, which is described as it occurs when an arguer presents his or her argument as one or only two options despite the presence of multiple possibilities. Example of this is either you fully devote yourself to company or you quit. The second fallacy or the second type of fallacy is appeal to ignorance. This is described also when this appeal of ignorance, by the way, occurs when something is instantly concluded to be true just because it is not proven to be false, and vice versa. For example, the writer does not talk about the connection between the victim or between the victim's killer and his sister, so there must be none. Another type of fallacy is slippery slope. Example of this is if we ban computer shops, then students will not be able to do research. And if they do not have tools for research, these students will fail their subjects. Another type of fallacy is the complex question. This occurs when two or more points are ruled into one, and the reader is expected to accept or reject both at the same time, when one point may be satisfactory while the other is not. Example is, have you stopped cheating on exams? Another type of fallacy is appeal to force. Appeal to force. This occurs when a threat instead of reasoning is used to argue. Example, if you do not admit that evolution is not real, we will isolate you from the group. Another type of fallacy is appeal to pity. This occurs when the element of pity is used instead of logical reasoning. Example, please do not fire me for being absent all month. I have a sick mother and a special child to support. Another type of fallacy is appeal to consequences. This occurs when unpleasant consequences of believing something are pointed out to show that the belief is false. And an example of this is you can't believe that colonialism is bad because if it were, then we would not be civilized. Another type of fallacy is bandwagon. It occurs when an argument is considered to be valid because it is what the majority thinks. Here is an example. Most Filipinas want to have fair skin because they think they look beautiful. Therefore, having fair skin must be the real standard of beauty. Another type of fallacy is attacking the person. When we attack the person, okay, it's a fallacy, attacking the person. This occurs when someone tries to refute an argument by attacking the character of a person instead of attacking the ideas of the argument. Example, I cannot accept your argument because, unlike me, you are not educated at Harvard University. Another type of fallacy is appeal to authority. Appeal to authority then occurs when the argument quotes an expert who's not qualified in the particular subject matter. Example, Bill Gates, the co-founder of Microsoft, recommends the effective fabric softening properties of Downing fabric softener or softener. See, that's appeal to authority. And that is a fallacy because Bill Gates, the co-founder of Microsoft, do not actually recommend the effective fabric softening, like for example, the Downy fabric softener. It's funny, right? Another fallacy or type of fallacy is that anonymous authority, where the authority in question is not mentioned or named. Example is, experts claim that eating peanuts causes pimples. See that? That is a fallacy, which is anonymous authority. There's no authority in question is not, or the authority in question is not mentioned or named, and it's a fallacy. Another type of fallacy is hasty generalization. This occurs when a sample is not significant enough to support a generalization about a population. Example, Martha, the foreigner from France, is very impolite. French people are mean and rude. Next type of fallacy is false analogy. This occurs when a writer assumes that two concepts that are similar in some ways are also similar in other ways. Example, drugs are like massages. They make you feel good. Another type of fallacy is accident. This occurs when a general rule is applied to a situation, even when it should be an exemption. Example, jaywalking is not allowed, so you should not have done that even when you were being chased by terrorists. Next is post hoc. Post hoc. HOC. It is an informal fallacy that states, since event A followed event B, event A must have been caused by event B. Example, Dina saw cat when they went home. Along the way, they crashed into a tree. The black cat must be the reason why they met an accident. Next fallacy is wrong direction. Wrong direction. This occurs when the direction between cause and effect is reversed. Example, liver damage leads to alcoholism. Next is complex cause. This is a type of fallacy, which is complex cause. This occurs when the explanation of an event is reduced to one thing when there are other factors which also contributed to the event. Example, we were not able to solve the problem because of limited time, even if all the other groups were able to do so. Next type of fallacy is irrelevant conclusion. This occurs when an argument which is supposed to prove something includes something else instead. Example, we must support the fight for gender equality between men and women. Women have suffered enough violence at home. Violence against women must be stopped. Next type of fallacy is straw man. Straw man. STRAW. Straw man. This occurs when the position of the opposition is twisted so that it is easier to refute. Example, opponent. We should relax the law governing the allowed smoking areas in the city. The fallacy, we should not do so because the number of smokers must increase. Next type of fallacy is affirming the consequence. Any argument of the form, if A is true, then B is true. If B is true, therefore A is true. Example, if you are drinking wine, you have a problem. Therefore, if you have a problem, you are drinking wine. Next fallacy is denying the antecedent. Any argument of the form, if A is true, then B is true. If A is not true, then B is not true. Example, if you are drinking wine, you have a problem. Therefore, if you are not drinking wine, you do not have a problem. And the last type of fallacy here is inconsistency. This occurs when arguments contradict one another. This occurs when arguments contradict one another. Example, Frank is older than Jake. Jake is older than Nolly, and Nolly is older than Frank. Let's take a look at these pieces of evidence to strengthen the author's claims. First, evidence from surveys, library research, and experiments. 2. Evidence from informant interviews, those who have direct experience related to the problem or issue, and evidence from expert interviews. Here are the guidelines in presentation of reasonable arguments and factual evidences to defend a stand. 1. It contains clear proposition or statement that must be defended. Second, it assesses conflicting opinions or opposing views on the issue. Third, it takes a firm stand on the issue. Fourth, here are the guidelines in presentation of reasonable arguments and factual evidences to defend a stand. 1. Contains clear proposition or statement that must be defended. 2. Assesses conflicting opinions or opposing views on the issue. Third, takes a firm stand on the issue. Fourth, lists arguments in an organized manner to defend the stand. 5. Consider your audience or the reader. Aside from your claim argument, you have to discuss counter-arguments. These are the arguments opposing a stand. Now, let's take practice tests. Let's have this practice test 1. Read each situation in the... Okay, so I'll be reading to you each situation and you're going to determine the kind of logical fallacy used in each situation. Okay, you are going to identify what type of logical fallacies that. Okay, here is the situation number 1. If we ban computer shops, then students will not be able to do research. And if they do not have tools for research, these students will fail their subjects. What logical fallacy is that? Number 2. If you do not admit that evolution is not real, if you do not admit that evolution is not real, you will isolate or we will isolate you from the group. If you do not admit that evolution is not real, we will isolate you from the group. What is your answer? Next. Number 2. If you do not admit that evolution is not real, we will isolate you from the group. Again, if you do not admit that evolution is not real, we will isolate you from the group. Number 3. I cannot accept your argument because, unlike me, you are not educated at Harvard University. Again, I cannot accept your argument because, unlike me, you are not educated at Harvard University. Number 4. Experts claim that eating peanuts causes pimple. Again, experts claim that eating peanuts causes pimples. And the last, number 5, Dina saw a cat when they went home. Along the way, they crashed into a tree. Number 5, Dina saw a cat when they went home. Along the way, they crashed into a tree. The black cat must be the reason why they met an accident. Again, Dina saw a cat when they went home. Along the way, they crashed into a tree. The black cat must be the reason why they met an accident. Now, given the issue, write your stand, defend it using your claims or arguments. For each argument, give an evidence. Issue number 1. Use of social media. It is a boon or bane. What is your stand? Then, you've got to have the arguments and evidences. Next, conduct a short and simple interview with your barangay officials, like barangay chairman or councilors, about the current issues that your community is experiencing. Please be reminded of the etiquette before, during, and after the interview process. Then, from the transpired issue, state and defend your stand. Make sure your arguments are supported by properly cited factual evidences. Of course, you've got to have the issue, then your stand, and then claim number one. What are your claims? For example, you have your claim, say the first claim, and then you've got to support it with evidences like evidence number one, evidence number two, evidence number three. And then, for example, your second claim, what is your next claim? It should be supported again by evidences like evidence one, evidence two, evidence three. For the scoring, here is the rubric. The content clearly states the stand of a writer. The arguments reflect higher level of thought, uses evidence from reputable sources. There are sufficient pieces of evidence to support the claim, free from logical fallacies. Then aligns the arguments with target readers' beliefs, attitude, values, and motivations. With the legend are the rating scale 5, which is to a very great extent, 4 to a great extent, 3 to a small extent, or to some extent rather, and then 2 to the less extent, and 1 to no extent. Okay? Thank you for your active participation in this learning session. God bless, and to God be all the glory.